My name is Mate, and I'm a subdeacon with the Liberal Catholic Church in Australia. Specifically, I come from the parish of St Michael and All Angels on the Gold Coast. This is my personal YouTube channel, which I've decided to start so that I can share with you some of my views about spirituality and some spiritual insights that I learn as I proceed along my journey of holy orders and get closer to the Christian priesthood. I'd also like to share my journey in building my own private oratory and some insights into Christian meditation and mysticism. And I'd also like to host some podcasts with other members of my church and other like-minded spiritual persons. So in this video, I'd like to give a brief intro into the church and who we are and what sets us apart from other Christian denominations. So I'd like to start by giving a brief intro into what the Liberal Catholic Church is. In a sentence, we can be described as a mystical church that encourages personal spiritual exploration and respects freedom of belief, while still having a very deep and beautiful sacramental tradition. So what this means is that we do not impose dogma from above. We don't expect our members to believe any specific doctrines or teachings. However, we do have a very beautiful set of rituals, particularly our rituals regarding the seven sacraments, which we hold dear to our hearts, because we believe that regardless of what people think and regardless of what people believe, through common participation in these rituals as a church, we will all grow in Christ and learn to know the truth. We do follow the traditional seven Catholic sacraments of baptism, confirmation, the Holy Eucharist, confession and absolution, unction, or also known as healing, marriage, and holy orders. And we administer these sacraments in a form that is as true as possible to the form in which they were instituted in the ancient historical church. Likewise, we maintain the apostolic succession. That is, all of our bishops have an unbroken line of succession to the 12 apostles and to Jesus Christ. And we get this line of succession from the historical church. However, importantly, we do not owe obedience to the Bishop of Rome, nor are we a part of the Roman Catholic Church in terms of organisation and structure. We are our own Christian denomination, and this is important because we encourage freedom of belief and freedom of exploration of mystical concepts, which often might not be within the wheelhouse of the Church of Rome. So next, I'd like to talk a little bit more about how our church actually started, and this will then lead into what makes us different to other Christian denominations. So the Liberal Catholic Church began as an offshoot of the Old Catholic Church, which was a church movement that started in Holland, in Utrecht, the See of Utrecht being quite a powerful see that had a lot of independence from Rome. And this movement branched out and tried to move into England. And in England, the movement grew a little bit. But then there were a few bishops that were consecrated by the Old Catholic Church, one of whom was Bishop Wedgwood. And Bishop Wedgwood then subsequently consecrated Bishop Leadbeater. And these two bishops actually had their own views about things. They were heavily interested in theosophy, that is, the study of divine wisdom. And they were also a lot more independent than some of their counterparts. As a result of this, an independent Christian denomination arose, one that actually combined the traditional worship and the beautiful stately ritual of the Catholic religion with theosophical concepts and theosophical understandings. And thus, in about 1916, the liberal Catholic movement was born. However, the movement then was known as the Old Catholic Church in England. The name Liberal Catholic was only given to the Church in roughly 1918. Now, unfortunately, because of the way that these bishops were consecrated, there was a schism with the Church of Rome. And as such, ever since then, even though we get our holy orders from the Church of Rome, we do not owe obedience to the Bishop of Rome, that is, the Pope. We are our own separate Christian denomination. And we've been active in over 30 countries over the last 100-odd years, and we continue to be active since. We are a small movement. We are not a very large church. And I'll explain why a little bit later when I discuss that we have a volunteer clergy. But essentially, we are a movement that encourages freedom of belief and freedom of exploration of spiritual concepts. We like our members to find the truth for themselves, rather than telling people what to believe. As stated in our Statement of Principles and Summary of Doctrine, which is one of the key documents of our church, and which I've put a link in the description for, we are not indifferent to the truth, but rather we want people to find the truth themselves, because truth is not truth, and I'm quoting here, nor is revelation a revelation, until it is seen to be so. Our purpose as a church is to encourage people to achieve union with the divine through spiritual practices and through participation in liturgy. And as such, we don't set down dogmas from above, but rather we encourage everybody to get together, worship, and take part in the sacraments, and then allow the Christ-light that is within all of us to unfold. So next, I'd like to highlight a few differences and a few important points that differentiate our church from other Christian denominations. There are a number of things that differentiate the Liberal Catholic Church from other Christian denominations. I've already spoken about what makes us different from the Roman Catholic Church, but what about other Christian denominations that may be a little bit more liberal in their outlook and that may also allow their members some measure of freedom of belief? What makes us different from them, you may ask? Well, one of the things that makes us different is our exploration of the perennial wisdom, also known as the ancient wisdom. And this is a strain of wisdom and understanding that has permeated religions throughout all of the ages, dating back all the way to the ancient Egyptians and probably before. We find that through learning about religion, that there are some common threads that seem to make their way into every faith, no matter what culture it stems from. As such, in the Liberal Catholic Church, even though we teach the Christian path, and even though we encourage people along the Christian path, we do not discount the wisdom and understanding that can be found in many other religions. Indeed, our founding bishops, who I previously spoke about, Bishops Wedgwood and Leadbeater, were heavily influenced by theosophy, the study of divine wisdom, and in fact, Bishop Leadbeater spent a lot of time in India studying Buddhism and Hinduism and Eastern philosophy. So our church takes a slightly different view towards this kind of wisdom to other Christian denominations. In many denominations, this sort of wisdom is denounced as witchcraft or as being pre-Christian. But in actual fact, what we recognise in the Liberal Catholic Church is that Christianity is really a continuation of this strain of ancient wisdom. And in fact, it is a more distilled form of this ancient wisdom that is easier for people who live in Western societies to understand and to associate with. As such, we encourage our members to study the ancient wisdom and to study other mythologies and other religions. We don't believe that these are bad things. In fact, we believe that through studying these alternative viewpoints, we can get closer to God, because not only does it provide us with a slightly different perspective of what the divine might be, it also encourages us to love our neighbours and to love people who may come from different backgrounds to us, which ultimately is one of the things that Jesus taught. One of the second things that differentiates us from other Christian denominations is the fact that in our church we teach reincarnation and karma, that is, the universal law of cause and effect. And we do not shy away from these teachings. Now, many Christian denominations will teach that you get one life here on earth, and then there's an afterlife that lasts forever, that's eternal. In the liberal Catholic Church, we take a slightly wider view. What we believe and what we teach, although I should emphasise that this is voluntary, every member is free to make up their own minds about these things. But officially, what's in our Statement of Principles and Summary of Doctrine is that life and the universe and the cosmos is a theatre of an ordered plan that spans many lifetimes and many eons, and that each of us here on earth is living through one incarnation during which we're learning lessons that will bring us closer to God. And there is a law, the universal law of cause and effect, that brings our action into closer alignment with God during each successive reincarnation. As we learn spiritual lessons and as we do good things and lead good lives, then we get closer along the path towards union with the divine. On the other hand, if we do sinful things, then we are slowed down in this path. But what we teach is that every human being has a spark of the divine within them, and as St. Augustine said, our hearts are ever restless until they find their rest in thee, in God. So we will continue proceeding along these paths, learning these lessons, until eventually we are brought into complete and total union with God. And we teach that this happens over successive lifetimes. Now, I'll go into a bit more detail about this point, and importantly about some of the scriptural references that support reincarnation as a Christian doctrine in a future video. But all I'll say is that this, I feel, is one of the key points that separates the liberal Catholic Church and liberal Catholic way of thinking from many other Christian denominations. We don't take an absolutist or defeatist view, or a deterministic view, rather. We believe that everyone will learn at their own pace, and that eventually all will be united with God. And this is a key part of our teaching, and a key part of what makes us different from other Christian denominations. So the last point that I'd like to mention in terms of how we're different from other denominations is that we have a volunteer clergy. We don't pay our clergy, nor are our clergy allowed to receive any material fees or rewards for their work in connection with the church. Now, this makes us a little bit special because it means that our clergy have a unique perspective on things. They're not just doing church stuff all day. We all have day jobs, and many of our members of our clergy are married and have families. We allow our priests to marry. So we understand the pressures of the world, and we understand secular life and the secular world. This places us in a unique position to be able to give advice about spiritual matters, because we don't just understand the spiritual side of things, we also understand the material side of things. Likewise, it means that all of our clergy are doing this work because they want to, because they're volunteering their time. We don't have the same level of political machinations and concern for one's own reputation and one's own position within the church that you may find in denominations that have a professional clergy. Rather, all of us are doing this because we love Christ and we would like to spread the message, and we would like to teach others to grow in union with Christ. So in summary, in this video I've given a very short and very brief introduction to the Liberal Catholic Church, our independence, a brief intro to our history, and some of our key teachings that differentiate us from other churches, such as our focus on divine union and the plan that spans many lifetimes that facilitates this union. So I hope you found this interesting and useful, and I look forward to seeing you in some future videos where I will go into more in-depth topics. I'll also be hosting some podcasts with other people where we will discuss specific theological and mystical topics in detail. In the meantime, in the description, I've put a link to our website here in Australia. I've also put a link to the YouTube channel of our Archbishop, who is the Archbishop and also the Vicar of St. Michael and All Angels, the parish in which I reside. And I've also put a link to the Facebook group of the Liberal Catholic Church in Australia. So please give us a like and a subscribe and a follow if you found this content interesting, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.